When the narcissist sees that you are doing better without them, something shifts beneath the surface that most people never fully understand. The change is not simply about the fact that you found a new job, built healthier friendships, smiled more often, or started enjoying your life again. The deeper issue is that your healing quietly destroys the illusion they worked so hard to create. For a long time, they wanted you to believe that your strength came from them, that your happiness depended on them, and that your future would always be tied to their approval. Whether they used praise, criticism, affection, guilt, or emotional confusion, the underlying message remained the same: you need me more than I need you. Over time, this belief can become deeply rooted. You begin questioning your own judgment. You hesitate before making decisions. You wonder if leaving was a mistake because they convinced you that life outside their influence would be filled with failure, loneliness, and regret. That is why your healing becomes such a powerful turning point. Every step you take toward emotional freedom quietly disproves the story they tried to write for your life. Every peaceful morning, every confident decision, every healthy relationship, and every moment of genuine joy becomes living evidence that their version of reality was never the truth. You are no longer surviving under the weight of someone else's expectations. You are beginning to rediscover the person you were always capable of becoming. One of the greatest misunderstandings people have is believing that the narcissist is mainly upset because they lost the relationship. In many cases, what unsettles them even more is losing the influence they once held over your emotions. They became accustomed to knowing exactly how to affect your mood. They knew which words would make you feel guilty, which criticisms would make you doubt yourself, and which moments of affection would keep you hoping that things would finally change. When you stop reacting the way you once did, the entire dynamic begins to collapse. The emotional control that once seemed effortless suddenly disappears, and that can be deeply frustrating for someone who relied on that control to feel powerful. Think about how different your life becomes when fear no longer directs your decisions. Instead of asking yourself whether they will approve, you begin asking what is healthy for you. Instead of constantly preparing for conflict, you begin expecting peace. Instead of measuring your worth by someone else's changing opinions, you begin recognizing that your value has always existed independently of their judgment. These are not small changes. They reshape the foundation of your identity. Healing often happens so gradually that you do not immediately notice it. One day you realize you laughed without forcing it. Another day you notice that an entire afternoon passed without thinking about them. Weeks later, you make an important decision without imagining how they would react. Months later, you find yourself encouraging someone else who is walking through the same pain you once experienced. None of these moments seem dramatic on their own, but together they reveal something remarkable. The person who once felt trapped is becoming someone who walks freely. Ironically, this transformation often becomes visible to the narcissist long before you fully appreciate it yourself. They notice that you are no longer chasing explanations. You stop trying to defend your character against false accusations. You no longer feel compelled to correct every misunderstanding or respond to every attempt at manipulation. Your silence is no longer filled with fear. It is filled with peace. That difference is difficult for someone driven by control to understand because they often mistake calmness for weakness. When they discover that your quietness comes from confidence rather than defeat, it challenges everything they expected. This is why many people experience unexpected contact just as they begin feeling emotionally stable. The narcissist may suddenly become curious, friendly, apologetic, or nostalgic. They may bring up pleasant memories while ignoring the painful ones. They may speak as though nothing significant ever happened. Sometimes they appear concerned about your well-being after showing little concern for a very long time. These actions can feel confusing because they arrive precisely when you are finally beginning to move forward. It is important to recognize that healing is not measured by whether the narcissist notices your progress. It is measured by how little their opinion determines your emotional state. Real recovery does not mean you never think about the past. It means the past no longer controls your present. You stop living as though every decision requires their permission. Instead, you build a life rooted in honesty, wisdom, and self-respect. There is also an important truth that many survivors eventually discover. Your healing is not about becoming a different person. It is about returning to the person you were before fear, manipulation, and constant criticism convinced you that you were not enough. The confidence you are developing is not artificial. The peace you are experiencing is not temporary. The strength you are finding was always within you, even during the seasons when you could barely recognize it. As your life becomes healthier, you also become less attracted to unhealthy relationships. You begin recognizing warning signs much earlier. You no longer mistake inconsistency for excitement or manipulation for love. You become more comfortable with honesty than with emotional drama. Healthy relationships begin to feel safe instead of boring because your understanding of love has matured. This may be one of the greatest victories of all because it changes not only your present but also your future. Perhaps the most beautiful part of healing is that it no longer revolves around the narcissist at all. At first, every step forward feels connected to escaping their influence. Eventually, however, your focus shifts. You begin pursuing dreams because they matter to you. You care for your health because your life has value. You strengthen your faith, deepen your character, invest in meaningful friendships, and create a future that reflects who you truly are. Your story is no longer defined by what someone tried to take from you. It is defined by what you chose to build after everything seemed broken. And that quiet transformation becomes the strongest evidence that your healing was never dependent on their permission. It was always waiting for the moment you believed that your life could become whole again. One of the most surprising moments in the healing journey comes when you realize that your silence carries more strength than all the arguments you ever tried to win. There was probably a time when you believed that if you could only explain yourself clearly enough, if you could just find the perfect words, they would finally understand your intentions. You thought that honesty would be enough to resolve the conflict, that love would soften their heart, or that patience would eventually lead to mutual respect. You invested countless hours trying to defend your character, clarify misunderstandings, and repair problems that seemed to appear over and over again. Each conversation felt like another opportunity to prove your sincerity. Yet somehow, no matter how carefully you spoke, you often walked away feeling more confused, more exhausted, and more responsible for problems that were never entirely yours. That cycle is not accidental. People who rely on manipulation often benefit when every disagreement becomes a debate with no finish line. If they can keep you explaining, apologizing, defending, and chasing their approval, your attention remains focused on them instead of on your own emotional well-being. Every time you feel compelled to justify yourself, they maintain a level of influence over your thoughts. Your emotional energy becomes consumed by trying to convince someone who has already decided not to listen. Instead of moving toward peace, you remain trapped in an endless search for validation from the very person who keeps withholding it. This is why silence can become such a powerful turning point. Silence is not about refusing to communicate out of anger or trying to punish someone by ignoring them. Healthy silence is different. It is the decision to stop participating in conversations that exist only to drain your peace. It is recognizing that not every accusation deserves an answer, not every insult deserves a response, and not every misunderstanding needs to be corrected. Sometimes the healthiest words are the ones you choose not to speak because you understand that the conversation itself has become part of the problem. For many people, this feels uncomfortable at first because they have spent so much time believing they must constantly defend themselves. They worry that remaining quiet means admitting guilt or accepting false accusations, but real confidence does not require constant defense. When you know who you are, you stop feeling responsible for controlling every opinion others have about you. You begin to understand that some people are committed to misunderstanding you because it allows them to maintain the story they have created. No amount of explanation can change someone who benefits from refusing to see the truth. There is an important difference between being silent because you are afraid and being silent because you have found peace. Fearful silence comes from feeling powerless. Peaceful silence comes from realizing that your emotional energy is valuable and should not be wasted on conversations designed to keep you trapped. The outside may look similar, but internally, everything has changed. Instead of feeling defeated, you feel free. Instead of carrying anxiety into every interaction, you carry confidence that your worth does not depend on someone else's agreement. This change often surprises the narcissistic person more than any emotional confrontation ever could. They may have expected tears, anger, pleading, or repeated attempts to fix the relationship. They understood those reactions because those reactions kept the emotional connection alive. What they may not expect is your calm refusal to continue participating in unhealthy patterns. When they attempt to provoke you and receive no emotional reaction, the familiar dynamic begins to disappear. The strategies that once produced predictable results no longer have the same effect. Many people make the mistake of believing they need to show the narcissist how happy they are or how successful they have become. They imagine that visible success will somehow make the other person regret everything they did. While it is natural to want justice after experiencing emotional pain, building your life around proving something to another person keeps them at the center of your story. Even your success becomes connected to their opinion. True healing asks for something much deeper. It invites you to create a life that is meaningful whether they notice it or not. That is why quiet growth is often more powerful than public revenge. Revenge still requires emotional attachment because your satisfaction depends on seeing someone else suffer or regret their actions. Healing requires no such audience. You begin exercising because you value your health, not because you hope they notice your appearance. You pursue new opportunities because they align with your purpose, not because you want to make them jealous. You build healthy friendships because genuine connection enriches your life, not because you want to replace what you lost. Every decision becomes rooted in your own values instead of your desire to create a reaction. Over time, this shift transforms not only your behavior but also your identity. You stop waking up wondering what they are thinking about you. You stop replaying old conversations in your mind, searching for better responses you could have given. You stop carrying imaginary debates into your future. Instead, your attention gradually returns to the parts of your life that deserve your care, your family, your work, your personal growth, your faith, your passions, and your emotional health. The space once occupied by constant emotional conflict becomes available for something much healthier. This does not mean there will never be moments when you feel tempted to respond. There may still be days when false accusations sting or when you wish people understood your side of the story. Those feelings are part of being human. The difference is that you no longer allow those emotions to control your decisions. Wisdom begins asking a different question. Instead of asking, how can I make them understand? You begin asking, will responding bring peace, clarity, or healing? If the answer is no, you become willing to let the misunderstanding remain unresolved because protecting your peace has become more valuable than winning another argument. Perhaps one of the greatest signs of emotional freedom is discovering that your silence is no longer filled with resentment. It becomes filled with purpose. You are not withdrawing because you have given up on life. You are stepping away from unnecessary conflict so you can invest your energy where it truly matters. Your days become less about surviving emotional battles and more about building a future grounded in honesty, stability, and self-respect. Eventually, the loudest statement you ever make is not spoken through dramatic speeches or carefully crafted responses. It is expressed through the life you quietly build. It is seen in your consistent peace, your healthier relationships, your renewed confidence, your emotional maturity, and your refusal to return to patterns that once kept you trapped. Long after the arguments have faded, your steady growth continues to speak for itself, revealing a strength that no manipulation could ever take away. One of the greatest misunderstandings after leaving a narcissistic relationship is believing that the ultimate goal is to make the other person regret losing you. It is an understandable desire. After enduring manipulation, criticism, emotional confusion, and repeated disappointment, it is natural to imagine a day when they finally realize what they threw away. You picture them watching your life from a distance, recognizing your worth, feeling remorse for the pain they caused, and wishing they had treated you differently. For many people, that vision becomes a source of motivation during the earliest stages of recovery. They work harder, look healthier, become more successful, and hope that one day the narcissist will see everything they have become. While this desire is deeply human, it is also one of the final emotional chains that must eventually be broken. The reason is simple. As long as your happiness depends on whether they notice your growth, they still occupy a central place in your emotional world. Your healing remains connected to their awareness, their reaction, or their approval. Even if they never speak another word to you, they continue influencing the direction of your thoughts. Every accomplishment silently asks the same question. I wonder what they would think if they saw this. Every success carries the hidden hope that it might finally change their opinion. In that moment, your freedom is incomplete because your emotional compass is still pointing towards someone who never deserved that level of influence over your life. Real victory begins when the focus slowly shifts away from them and back toward you. This does not happen overnight. Emotional recovery is rarely a straight line. Some days you feel strong and confident. Other days, an old memory unexpectedly returns and reminds you of everything you endured. There may be moments when you still wonder if they ever think about you or whether they feel any regret. Those thoughts do not mean you are failing. They simply remind you that healing is a process, not a single decision. As you continue growing, however, something remarkable begins to happen. Your goals start changing. Instead of wanting them to see your success, you begin enjoying your success for its own sake. Instead of wishing they understood your value, you begin recognizing your value without needing their agreement. The emotional weight that once rested on their opinion gradually disappears. What once felt incredibly important begins to lose its power. This transformation often surprises people because it feels quieter than they expected. They imagined healing would come with dramatic moments of closure or emotional confrontation. Instead, healing often arrives in ordinary moments. You wake up one morning and realize you have not thought about them for several days. You accomplish something meaningful, and your first instinct is to celebrate with people who genuinely love you instead of wondering whether the narcissist would be impressed. You hear someone mention their name, and instead of feeling your stomach tighten, you simply acknowledge it and continue with your day. These moments may appear small, but together they reveal a profound change taking place within you. One reason narcissistic relationships are so emotionally exhausting is because they train people to seek validation outside themselves. Compliments become unpredictable. Affection becomes conditional. Approval depends on meeting constantly changing expectations. Over time, you may begin believing that your worth is something another person has the authority to give or take away. That belief becomes deeply ingrained even after the relationship ends. You continue searching for external confirmation because that pattern has become familiar. True emotional freedom requires replacing that pattern with something healthier. You begin understanding that your value is not determined by another person's ability to recognize it. A diamond does not become less valuable because someone refuses to appreciate it. Truth does not become false because someone denies it. Your character, your kindness, your integrity, and your purpose exist independently of another person's opinion. Once this realization settles into your heart, your entire perspective begins changing. This new way of thinking also affects how you respond to success and failure. When your identity depends on external validation, every setback feels devastating because it threatens your sense of worth. Every criticism feels deeply personal because you have placed your value in someone else's hands. But when your identity becomes rooted in healthy self-respect and inner confidence, challenges no longer define you. They become opportunities to learn, adapt, and continue growing without questioning your value as a person. Another beautiful aspect of emotional freedom is that it allows you to celebrate others without comparison. During unhealthy relationships, competition often replaces connection. You may have felt constantly compared to others or pressured to prove your worth. Healing breaks that cycle. You no longer measure your progress against someone else's life. Instead, you compare yourself only to the person you were yesterday. Growth becomes personal rather than competitive. Success becomes meaningful because it reflects your own journey instead of serving as evidence against someone else's opinion. Forgiveness also begins taking on a different meaning. Many people believe forgiveness requires forgetting the past or pretending the pain never happened. In reality, forgiveness often means refusing to allow past wounds to continue controlling your future. It is releasing the emotional burden of constantly replaying old injuries. It is choosing peace over bitterness, not because the other person earned it, but because your own heart deserves freedom. This does not mean you abandon healthy boundaries or invite harmful people back into your life. It simply means you stop allowing resentment to occupy space that could be filled with purpose, joy, and hope. As emotional freedom grows, your relationships begin changing as well. You become less attracted to people who create chaos and more drawn to those who demonstrate consistency, honesty, and kindness. You stop confusing emotional intensity with genuine love. You begin recognizing that healthy relationships are built on mutual respect rather than control, trust rather than suspicion, and encouragement rather than constant criticism. The qualities that once seemed ordinary now become deeply valuable because your understanding of love has matured. Perhaps the most powerful evidence of healing is found in your daily decisions. You make choices based on your values rather than your fears. You pursue opportunities because they align with your purpose instead of trying to impress someone from your past. You invest in your health because you believe your life matters. You protect your peace because you have learned how precious it truly is. Every decision reflects a growing confidence that your future belongs to you. Eventually, there comes a day when the question is no longer whether the narcissist regrets losing you. The question simply no longer matters. Your joy is no longer waiting for their apology. Your confidence is no longer dependent on their recognition. Your peace is no longer connected to their approval. You have discovered something far more valuable than making someone else regret the past. You have reclaimed ownership of your own life, and that freedom becomes a treasure no one can ever take from you again. One of the most confusing stages of recovery begins when the narcissist suddenly reappears after a long period of distance. Just when you have started rebuilding your confidence, creating healthy routines, and experiencing genuine peace, they somehow find a reason to contact you again. The timing often feels too precise to be a coincidence. You may have gone weeks, months, or even years without hearing from them, yet the moment your life begins moving forward, a message arrives, a phone call appears, or someone mentions that they have been asking about you. This unexpected return can stir emotions you believed were finally settled. It does not necessarily mean you still want the relationship back. It simply reminds you that emotional wounds can be reopened if they are not fully healed. Many people immediately assume that this renewed contact must mean the narcissist has changed. They hope that time has brought maturity, self-awareness, or genuine remorse. They want to believe that the pain both people experienced has created an opportunity for a healthier relationship. After all, everyone is capable of personal growth. Everyone can learn from mistakes. Those are hopeful thoughts, and hope is not a weakness. The challenge comes when hope ignores patterns that have repeated themselves many times before. The return often begins with subtle changes in behavior. The person who once criticized you constantly may suddenly become unusually kind. Someone who rarely accepted responsibility may begin speaking softly about the past. They may tell you they have been thinking about you, that life has not been the same without you, or that they finally understand what you meant all along. Sometimes they apologize, but the apology remains vague. Instead of specifically acknowledging the harm they caused, they focus on how difficult life has been for them or how much they miss the relationship. At first glance, these words may sound sincere because they appeal to the compassionate part of your heart. Compassion is one of the reasons many people remain trapped in unhealthy relationships longer than they should. Caring people naturally want to believe the best about others. They understand that everyone struggles. They recognize that people make mistakes. They do not want to become cold, bitter, or unforgiving. These qualities are beautiful when shared with emotionally healthy people. However, compassion without discernment can become an open door for repeated manipulation. Kindness should never require abandoning wisdom. When someone returns after losing control over your life, it is important to pay attention not only to what they say, but also to what they consistently do. Words are easy to produce, especially when someone realizes they are losing influence. Lasting change is demonstrated through repeated actions over time. Genuine transformation includes humility, accountability, respect for boundaries, patience, and a willingness to rebuild trust without demanding immediate access to your life again. If those qualities are absent, emotional promises alone are not enough to create a healthy future. One reason the return feels so emotionally powerful is because it often awakens memories of the relationship's best moments. Your mind naturally remembers the laughter, the affection, the dreams you shared, and the times when everything seemed full of possibility. It is easy to forget that those positive experiences existed alongside repeated cycles of confusion, criticism, manipulation, or emotional instability. Memory has a way of highlighting moments of comfort while softening memories of pain, especially when loneliness or uncertainty enters your life. This is why emotional awareness becomes so important. Healing requires remembering the complete story, not just the chapters your heart wishes had lasted forever. Every relationship contains good moments, even unhealthy ones. If there had never been kindness, encouragement, or affection, very few people would have stayed. The difficulty is not recognizing the good that existed. The difficulty is honestly acknowledging the harmful patterns that repeatedly overshadowed it. Sometimes the narcissist's return is not dramatic at all. Instead of asking to rebuild the relationship, they simply begin checking on you. They react to your social media posts, ask mutual friends about your life, send holiday greetings, or create small opportunities for conversation. These interactions may seem harmless, but they can slowly reopen emotional attachment if healthy boundaries are not maintained. Before long, you may find yourself thinking about them more often, wondering what their intentions are, and emotionally revisiting a chapter of life you had worked so hard to leave behind. There is another important reason these moments require wisdom. Healing changes you. The person you are today is not the same person who first entered the relationship. You have learned painful lessons about trust, self-respect, emotional boundaries, and personal value. Because of that growth, You may assume you are now strong enough to handle renewed contact without consequences. Confidence is valuable, but confidence should never replace caution. Even emotionally healthy people can become vulnerable when old emotional connections are reactivated. Healthy boundaries exist to protect your peace, not to punish another person. Many people misunderstand boundaries as walls built out of anger. In reality, healthy boundaries are expressions of self-respect. They communicate what behavior you will and will not accept. They protect your emotional well-being while allowing you to continue living with kindness and integrity. A boundary does not require shouting, arguing, or proving someone wrong. Sometimes it simply means saying no with calm confidence and refusing to negotiate your peace. It is also worth remembering that genuine love never requires you to abandon yourself. If reconnecting with someone immediately fills you with anxiety, confusion, guilt, or emotional exhaustion, those feelings deserve attention. Healthy relationships may involve challenges, but they should not consistently leave you questioning your worth or doubting your reality. Peace is not the absence of all problems. It is the presence of mutual respect, honesty, safety, and emotional stability. As your healing continues, you become better at recognizing patterns instead of reacting only to emotions. You learn to observe consistency rather than becoming captivated by isolated moments of kindness. You understand that temporary affection cannot erase years of repeated unhealthy behavior. You realize that protecting your future sometimes requires disappointing someone who wants access to your life again. That decision may feel painful, especially if you still care about them as a human being. But caring about someone does not obligate you to return to a situation that repeatedly damaged your emotional health. Perhaps the greatest sign of growth is that your decisions are no longer driven by fear, guilt, loneliness, or the hope that this time everything will finally be different. Instead, they are guided by wisdom, clarity, and a deep respect for the life you have worked so hard to rebuild. You no longer measure love by emotional intensity or dramatic promises. You measure it by consistency, honesty, accountability, and peace. In doing so, you protect not only the progress you have made, but also the future you are now free to create, choosing relationships that strengthen your spirit rather than diminish it.